30 years ago, I started doing research on subject of Jewish children saved in Catholic convents in Poland. I found 200 convents which were engaged in helping Jews during the war, and wrote a book about that. The book was translated to English and published in New York in 1997 on title, Your Life is Worth Mine. In my book, Your Life is Worth Mine, many questions from history of Poles and Polish Jews had no answers. The first one was about the role of the Polish Jews in the Holocaust. The second one was about why the Jewish people are thinking that Poles had a duty to sacrifice their own life in saving Polish Jews. The answers to these questions and many others I presented in my book, which I want to talk about today. This book is titled Polish-Jewish Relations 1939-1945, Beyond the Limits of Solidarity. If you want to understand what happened in Poland between Poles and Jews in World War II, we must first remember the multinational character of the Polish state and the uniqueness of Jewish history on Polish lands. The Polish state was born in 10th century. The first Jews had started to settle in Poland in 10th-11th century. The Jewish colonists were under the king's power, which guaranteed them the right to create the religious communities and the freedom for economic activity. The Polish kings and the princes in the Middle Ages, especially King Kazimierz the Great in the 14th century, created good conditions for the Jewish colonists. The significant reason for such a position of the Polish kings were economic. The Polish climate is very favorable for grain production. In the Middle Ages, like now, in Poland there was an overproduction, especially of grain. But in the Middle Ages, in Poland, there was nobody to sell it abroad. In the Polish society, there was no social group which was able to specialize in the trade of the produced food. The Polish kings made their choice, selecting the oppressed Jewish people of Western Europe who were experienced in trade and had the necessary contacts and capital, and invited them to settle in Poland. The proposal made by the Polish kings and princes for the Jews to settle in Poland and to engage in food trade was made at the moment when the Jewish living space was rapidly diminishing in Western Europe. In the Middle Ages, almost all the important countries of Western Europe denied the Jews asylum. The Jews, as Polish citizens, had their own legal structure, religion, and till the end of the 18th century, their own parliament called the Jewish Parliament of the Four Lands in Poland. This parliament was unique in the whole world. Apart from Poland, there was none other country in which the Jews had a separate parliament only for their own nations. From the Middle Ages to the end of the 18th century, the society in Poland was composed of 5 social groups: the king, the nobility, the clergy, the peasantry, and the Jewish people who were working in trade. This model, which had functioned for several centuries, started to break down only at the end of the 18th century. In 1795, the Polish state was destroyed. For 122 years, the territories of Poland were annexed by Russia, Austria, and Germany. Poles never truly accepted the fact that Poland had disappeared from the map of Europe. Their life and death fighting with the invaders, Russians, Austrians, and Germans, was undertaken by every generation. The big problem with the Polish Jews during the 123 years was that they did accept the authority of Russians, Austrians, and Germans as a legality on Polish lands, collaborated with them, and did not want to support Poles in their fighting for the freedom of Poland. For 123 years, the Poles had hoped for the Jewish solidarity of the reconstructed Polish state. Polish Jews, aside from honorable exceptions, like Berek Joselewicz, refused Polish state their solidarity. When in 1918 Poles gained their freedom and the time for reckoning had come, Polish Jews stood before Poles with empty hands. Poles did not accept any excuses. In accordance with logical facts, Poles decided that the Jewish nation, which had been residing on Polish lands for 1,000 years, is like foreigners on Polish lands. In order to understand the criticism of the generation of pre-war Poles and thinking about them as anti-Semites, it's worth making reference to modern times. The most similar of the multinational nature of Poland would be with that of the United States. After September 11, the citizens of the United States were standing arm in arm to fight for the peace and prosperity of the American home. In this situation, if 10 million Americans with Polish roots were to declare that they don't want to fight for freedom of the United States of America because their loyalty obliges them only to the Polish state and nation, then the rest of American citizens would have the right to recognize them as foreigners and give them the order to go back to Poland. If in that case we were to apply a uniform measure to evaluate all the nations in the world, then we must admit that Poles in 1918, because of the absence of solidarity of Polish Jews in the fight to regain Polish independence, had the right to call Jews living in Poland not as citizens but as foreigners. Polish Jews for 123 years did not want to support Poles in their fighting for freedom of Poland. But when Poland had regained her independence, the Polish Jews came to the Poles with demands for giving them a half of the Polish state. In May of 1919, when the Polish Parliamentary Forum was discussing the future Polish constitution, Jewish parliamentarian Isaac Greenbaum demanded, "It shall constitute autonomous provinces for Jews in Poland." The Poles did not agree to the creation of Jewish autonomies in Poland. The Poles did not want to give the Polish Jews any part of the Polish state. Another thing is the question, why the Jews demanded autonomy only from the Poles? Why did they not make such a proposition to the parliaments of France, England, Germany, or United States? There is no doubt that the demand displayed by Polish Jews for Poles to give them half of the Polish state dictated Polish-Jewish relations during both the 20-year period between the wars from 1918 to 1939, as well as during the years of the Second World War. At the outbreak of World War II, there were 3,500,000 Jews living in Poland. Every 10th citizen of the Polish state was a Jew. Such statistics we cannot find in any other European country. In the middle of the 20th century, Poland was the only country in the world where 3 million Jews functioned in a social form that did not differ from the forms of the Middle Ages. The 3 million Jews living in Poland were the Hasidim. They wore ritual dressing, they did not speak Polish, and they lived in large cities within the areas of their own neighborhoods. They also constitute the majority of inhabitants in small towns. They lived in ghettos, but it was not the Poles who built the ghettos for Polish Jews. Polish Jews were living in ghettos because of the fear of being assimilated. About the life of Polish Jews living in Poland before World War II, you can read, for example, in books by Jewish writer Isaac Bashevis Singer. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. 17 days later, the Soviets did the same from the east. World War II began. Jewish historians and the world historiography of the Holocaust give most attention to years 1942-1945, when the Germans were killing Jews. For this reason, I asked the historical questions. What was happening in Poland during the 3 years before the Holocaust? What was happening with the Polish Jews in years 1939-1942? What kind of attitude was taken by the Polish Jews towards the Germans occupying Poland? I understood that if I want to find answers to the questions what was happening to the Polish Jews in 1939-1942, I should be looking for answers in the Jewish sources and Jewish scientific descriptions, because the Poles lived on the opposite side of the Jewish ghetto walls, and during the whole war they did not know exactly what was going on intramuros. 50 years ago, Hannah Arendt, Jewish professor at Columbia University, was an observer in Jerusalem in the process against German genocide Adolf Eichmann. In her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, a report on the banality of evil, Hannah Arendt suggested that if we want to understand the Holocaust in Poland, we must first look for the answers to the questions about the collaboration of Polish Jews with the Germans and why one could not say that they were traitors. About the collaboration of Polish Jews with the executioners of the Holocaust wrote also Jewish historian M.C. Steinhoff. The American historian Brian Mark Rick also wrote about the 150,000 Jewish soldiers serving in the German army. This way, the Jewish authors suggested to me that the first question to which I must find the answer will be the problem of the collaboration of the Polish Jews with Germans in Poland. Between the Jewish historical sources, which were made by Polish Jews, the most important and most credibly are the Warsaw Diary of Adam Czerniakow and the Łódź Ghetto Diary. The Warsaw Diary of Adam Czerniakow includes the period from the 6th of September 1939 until the 23rd of July 1942. Adam Czerniakow was a leader of the Jewish community in Warsaw. He wrote his diary on wartime reality from a perspective of Jewish officials. In his official position, he was both a participant and a creator of the reality he described. About the diary of the ghetto of Łódź, a Jewish historian, Professor Lucjan Dobroszycki, wrote, "The majority of the facts described was based on the first-hand information. I started to read page after page, day to day, these two Jewish diaries. So it is with the historical science that if somebody will apply to the old and well-known historical sources with the new questions, it is sometimes possible to get unexpected answers. The same situation was in the case of a question about the collaboration of Polish Jews with Germans during the Holocaust in Jewish ghettos in Poland in 1939-1942. When I was analyzing the information from the well-known and not questioned nor by the Polish historians, neither by the Jewish historian sources, I came to an unexpected discovery which demands verification to the previous way of thinking about the Holocaust and the Polish-Jewish relations during the Second World War. This discovery was the fact that the Jewish ghettos in Poland during the Second World War were not the places of the Polish Jews' isolation created only by the Germans, but the Jewish autonomies which were built by the Polish Jews with the permission and in cooperation of the Germans occupying Poland. The information from the diary of Adam Czerniakow and the diary of the ghetto of Łódź were authenticated by Emanuel Ringelblum's notes from the Warsaw Ghetto and many other Jewish historical sources. The first discovery was the attitude of Polish Jews to World War II. The attitude of the greater majority of Polish Jews to the Germans occupying Poland in World War II was the same as in years 1795-1918. They recognized Hitler's attack on Poland as a Polish matter and it is the only Poles who must fighting with the Germans. In 1939, they did accept the authority of Germans as legality on Polish lands, and they did not want to support Poles in their fight for the freedom of Poland. Let us return to the diary of Adam Czerniakow. In 1939, he became the representative of over 300,000 Jews residing in Warsaw. After the outbreak of war, he did not actively include himself in the defense of Warsaw. He also did not establish any contact with the Polish authority. But when the Germans had entered Warsaw on October 2nd, 1939, Adam Czerniakow spent almost every day with the Germans SS, negotiating with them the conditions of collaboration and the territorial construction of a Jewish territorial autonomy in Warsaw. The idea of building Jewish autonomies within Poland in 1939 was the same which was articulated by the Jewish members of the parliament of the Polish state in 1919. Written openly, the term independent autonomy appears for the first time in Adam Czerniakow's diary dated September 20, 1940, in which it was the same, at this time in which there was a Jewish state. On May 19, 1941, Adam Czerniakow accepted the nomination to the position of mayor of the Jewish autonomy of Warsaw from the hands of the Germans and thus began to use the title of the mayor of the Jewish autonomy of Warsaw. In formal legal sense, from that moment, the Jewish autonomy became part of the composition of German's Third Reich, and Adam Czerniakow became the state official representing the German authorities with regard to residents of the Jewish autonomy in Poland. The same was in the Jewish autonomies in other cities in Poland. The Polish Jews devoted the years of 1939-1942 to realizing the construction of Jewish autonomous provinces on Polish lands. After 3 years of the start of the war, they had the autonomous Jewish administrative structures, they had Jewish trams, Jewish children were learning the Jewish language in Jewish schools, they read Jewish newspapers, criminals were caught by Jewish police and imprisoned in Jewish prison, a Jewish mailman delivered their letters, Jews were enjoying themselves in the Jewish theaters and cafes, and they had the designated day of rest, the Free Saturday. My researches confirmed the thesis of Jewish professor at Columbia University, Hannah Arendt. The cooperation of the Jewish administration with the Germans in years 1939-1942 in Poland, as it's shown in the Jewish historical sources, leaves no doubts. But has no doubts also, we could not say that they were traitors, because Polish Jews collaborate with Germans for realizing the Jewish dream about the independent Jewish autonomy in Poland. About the Jewish ghettos in Poland, 1939-1942, like about the Jewish autonomy, writes also Jewish historian Michael C. Steinlauf. Because Poles did not want to give Polish Jews any form of autonomy on Polish lands in years 1918-1939, Polish Jews built them with Germans in the years 1939-1942, at a time when Germans were occupying Poland. The creation of the Jewish autonomous provinces, referred to as ghettos in both colloquial and academic jargon to this day, they were not only the result of Germans' plan of repression, but also the result of the realization of the Polish Jews' idea of Jewish autonomous provinces, which was born in 1919. The only thing we are absolutely sure, the establishment of the Jewish autonomy in Warsaw and the other Jewish autonomies on the Polish lands, Łódź, Kraków, Lublin, etc., is the key element for the understanding of the Holocaust of Polish Jews. But first of all, for the understanding of the Polish-Jewish relations in 1939-1945. The quicker the whole world will understand on the base of the Jewish historical sources that the Jewish ghettos in reality were on Polish lands the independent Jewish autonomies, the quicker it will be possible to make the history of the Polish Jews and the history of the Poles during World War II true and to the understanding relations between the two nations. In political, military and mentality sense, Polish Jews in the territorial autonomies in 1942 were defenseless. They were isolated from the outside world. They did not have any channels of communication with the underground structures of the Poles. Because they had accepted the tactics of absolute cooperation with the Germans, they lacked not only arms, but also the concept of defense against them. In the summer of 1942, when the Germans started the Holocaust, in the Jewish autonomy in Warsaw lived 500,000 Jews, and they had only one gun. In the summer of 1942, the Germans started the complete annihilation of Polish Jews. Adam Czerniakow, mayor of the independent Jewish autonomy in Warsaw, did not want to have his hands in the annihilation of his own brothers. He committed suicide. Adam Czerniakow saved his honor. He was a glorious exception between other Jewish officials in Poland. The authorization to send Polish Jews to death was signed by other Jewish officials, and Jews were sent to the gas chambers by the Jewish police. In Łódź, Chairman Ronkowski personally participated in preparing the list of Jews to send them to their death. He also sent thousands of Jewish children to their death. One of the most shocking Jewish historical sources about the Holocaust are the poems of Jewish poet killed in Auschwitz, Isaac Katzenelson. In his poem, The Song of the Murdered Jewish Nation, there are these lines. I am the one who saw, who observed from up close, as children, wives and husbands, and my grey-haired elders, like rocks and scarps, were crowded onto tracks by the oppressor, who beat them and insulted them with inhumane words. The Jewish police, cruel and wild thugs. They found us inside closets and dragged us out from under the beds and cursed, move it to the Umschlagplatz, that is your place. I watched this from behind a window. I saw gangs of murders, the Jewish police. Oh my God, I saw those beating and the beaten who were going to their deaths. And I folded my hands in shame, shame and humiliation. The hands of Jews assigned death to the Jews, the helpless Jews. In the summer of 1942, 300,000 Jews were sent from Warsaw to the gas chambers in Treblinka. It was the same in Warsaw as it was in all the other Jewish autonomies in occupied Poland. Jewish chronicler Emanuel Ringelblum, in describing the horror of Jewish crimes, summarized it in this way. Every Jew can tell about thousands of facts relating to the cruelty of the Jewish police. Those who survive it shall never forget it, and it should be punished accordingly. Jewish historical sources don't lie. Jewish officials and Jewish police actively participated in the murdering of their own nation. What about the Jewish penalty for Jewish people who collaborated with the Germans in the Holocaust in this situation? In Israel in 1950, a law was passed requiring the prosecution of crimes against the Jewish nation in World War II. Parts 10 and 11 of this law refer to Jewish people who collaborated with the Germans in the Holocaust. I found the original act from 1950, which is located in the Knesset archives. This Jewish law speaks about the unlimited right of Jews to save their own lives in the face of death. In the light of Jewish law, the attitude of Jewish officials and policemen in the Holocaust were excused. The Israeli law of 1950 freed them of all responsibility. Jewish laws have also found excuses for the 150,000 Jewish soldiers of Hitler. Jewish law, tradition, and religion say every Jew had to do everything to save his own life. He also had the right to give up other people to death. He also has the right to kill them, because saving one's own life is primary for every Jew. The name of this philosophy of life in the Jewish tradition during the Holocaust time was called Kiddush HaChaim. This is absurd. From 1945 to this day, I have never heard about the Jewish penalty for the Jews who cooperated with Germans in the Holocaust, Jewish executioners, Jewish officials, Jewish police, and Jews who collaborated with the Gestapo. None of them ever received a penalty from other Jews. What about Poles in this situation? Because Polish Jews in the years 1939-1942 collaborated with Germans occupying Poland, in 1942, when the Germans undertook to annihilate them, Polish-Jewish relations were perhaps the worst on record. On October 15, 1941, the Germans occupying Poland issued a death penalty to Poles who offered help to Jews. From that day, Poland became the only country in German-occupied Europe in which Poles were punished by death not only for hiding adult Jews or Jewish children, but also for giving them food or water. Summer 1942. This was the exact moment at which Polish Jews began to expect solidarity from the Poles. In World War II, Poles did not collaborate with the Germans. In 1,000 years of Poland's existence, the collaboration with the occupiers was forbidden by law. Because Poles refused a cooperation with the occupier in 1942, when the Germans began the annihilation of Polish Jews, not a single Polish formation took part in that disgraceful act. In 1942, when the Germans had started the Holocaust of the Jewish people, the Polish state had already not existed for 3 years. Jewish historian Israel Gutman wrote, "The Polish state was unable to save the Polish Jews." If we keep in mind that the Second Front was created in mid-1944, then it's not difficult to recognize that no one in the world possessed the necessary military capabilities to save the Polish Jews in 1942. For that, rescuing the life of a Polish Jew could only have been undertaken by individual Poles. Every Pole who wanted to save a Polish Jew did take that at the risk of his own life and the life of his family. From the Catholic Church in Poland, the Polish population received clear directives and behavioral guidelines with regard to German annihilation of Jews. Jewish children and Jewish adults were being rescued by Polish nuns in at least 200 convents. The same stance was taken by monasteries of male congregation, as well as by diocesan priests. The Polish underground state authorities on September 27, 1942, established a special committee for helping Jews. Initially called the Konrad Żegota Committee, it evolved into the Council for Aid to Jews. This underground Council for Aid to Jews in Poland was unique in the whole of occupied Europe. In the autumn of 1942, a special courier of the Polish government in exile, Jan Karski, a soldier of the Polish Underground Army, putting his life at risk, prepared reports and published information about the Holocaust through the free world. He was talking with the President of the USA and the government of Great Britain. For that, the President of the United States of America posthumously awarded Jan Karski the highest honor, the American Medal of Freedom. In the Second World War were killed more than 3 million Poles and close to 3 million Polish Jews. Poles save about 5 to 10% of Polish Jews, which is about 170 to 335,000 Jewish people. In saving one Jew or Jewish child in Poland, about 10 Poles risked their own life. In the years 1942-1945, between 1,700,000 to 3,350,000 Poles did risk their own life in saving Jews. By almost 70 years, which was going after the war, Jewish historians and Jewish journalists, like many other Jews, are hiding the truth about the participation of Polish Jews in killing other Polish Jews and proclaim to the whole world a falsehood about Poles. They are accusing Poles of not doing everything possible for the Jews during the Holocaust. Władysław Bartoszewski, who rescued many Polish Jews in response to this accusation in Jerusalem, said, "For Poles, doing everything possible for the Jews during the war meant giving their own life for them. I am alive, so therefore I did not do everything possible to save Jews. The Poles are not a nation of saints. Poles did not want to be killed by the Germans. For Poles, this was a traumatic decision chosen between their own life and their family or saving the life of Polish Jews." Abbe Foxman, head of Anti-Defamation League in New York, rescued by a Polish woman, said he could not, as a Jew, do the same if the situation was in reverse. Putting your life in danger to rescue another human being is a decision which no one has the right to expect from another. Poles were not obliged to sacrifice their own lives in saving a Jewish life. Jews did not sacrifice their own lives in the saving of a Jewish life either. From the perspective of Jewish law, a Jew has the obligation of protecting his own life at all costs, even at the cost of another Jew. The Jewish law from 1950 speaks about the unlimited rights of Jews to save their own lives in danger of death. The law should be applied equal to all, the same law for Poles as for the Jews. In the light of this Jewish law from 1950, Poles, like Jews, had unlimited right to save their own lives in danger of death. In the light of this Jewish law from 1950, any Jewish accusation for Poles are absurd. Unless Rabbi Joseph Ovadia was telling the truth several years ago in the Israeli parliament when he said, "Goyim, non-Jewish people, are born only to serve Jews." If yes, I want to tell Rabbi Ovadia and other Jews, Poles were not born to serve Jews. In World War II, Poles, like Jews, were not obliged to sacrifice their own life for saving the life of Jews. The same justification must be obligatory for Poles as for Jews. Thank you.